Hi, this is Jordan from Limit Lounge Review. Tanya's over reviewing Doctor and the Medics at the moment, and I'm here backstage with Robin Ince. Hello, Robin.
Hello. This is wonderful, isn't it? It's a beautiful view of the Portaloos. They look very good, Portaloos. The Portaloos, one of the great things about science is the technology of the festival has improved a great deal since my first one in the late 80s.
Oh, do tell.
Well, the Portaloos, they're clean. They have weird gel which strips the skin off your hands to ensure that your skin is clean. You know, in the old days when I was a young man going to Glastonbury, it probably was a kind of Vesuvius of excrement. So, yeah.
You've not been to Leeds recently, then?
Now that said, Leeds is the one. But you see, I have to admit, one of the worst things is I haven't actually been to a festival without being on at a festival. So the truth is, I see the backstage toilets. Leeds, I do remember that. Leeds and Reading both have a thing, which again, on a scientific bent, when will teenagers realise that polystyrene is not an effective fuel for a bonfire? Every year at Reading, I see them there with their stacks of polystyrene cups going, it's really not going to warm you, it's not going to be effective.
And occasionally, if it's dry weather, you'll even see them trying to pick up the grass itself and put No, I have to say, on the note of toilets, the ones actually out there in the festival main area, really actually quite nice.
Well, I think that one of the great things about this festival is it's a very good primer festival because they've actually got a block of real concrete, loos that are used at the racecourse. So it's kind of the first one before you get ready for going into the small kind of, the enclave.
Like trainer wheels.
Exactly, yeah. And then you're, normally, of course, not this year because there's no Glastonbury, but normally this is the slope towards Glastonbury.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you're probably best known at the moment for the Infinite Monkey Cage, now into its 5th series. Now, you cover all sorts of topics, from the apocalypse to space travel. What's been your favourite?
Well, do you know what? The one that we just did, we've just recorded one that will be going out. I think next series is the end of June. And it was just about the fact that we know so little about the oceans. Obviously, we know more about the moon than we know about the oceans. 80% of what lies within the oceans, we know nothing about, as far as we know. As far as we know, it's 80%. Of course, that statistic may well be wrong. But we're just having this great conversation, so many interesting ideas there, which I'd never really thought about. I was starting to wonder, what is the fossil record like within an ocean? How much does that change? And then we were talking about, the ice fish, these wonderful fish which have no hemoglobin, which for a long period of time people believed that, basically a creature with blood, hemoglobin's part of the thing, and suddenly you've got these transparent fish, or when they're big versions of the ice fish, you can just see all their innards. It's incredible. Wow. And then we were talking about, I don't even know if we got round to talking about the fact that some fish have copper rather than iron in their blood. And so I think just because I enjoyed, it was great. I liked doing nearly all of them. The only one I didn't like, there was one we did about 6 degrees of separation, which both Brian and me went, well, we kind of, at the end of it, you just went, oh, it is that thing I thought it was. That was the one. But our producer says it's one of the best we ever did, and we had a huge listening figure, so we always have a big argument over that one. And
with the oceans, is there any possibility that's going to link with perhaps like life on Mars? Because I know there's sulfur life forms that don't need oxygen whatsoever or water and just live based on sulfur. So is there any chance it'll go on that angle?
The snotites. You're thinking of they're the snotites, aren't they? Yes.
How did I forget that?
Well, that I always think that's one of the exciting things is every single time we find out, because you've got things like Drake's equation and this idea of what is required for life to exist on other planets, and the fact that we keep finding things that seem to break our initial rules, and how much of our view of what life, what is required for life is a kind of narcissistic thing about, well, on the planet Earth this is required, so we believe it must be required. So I think, whether there is anything else that lies living creatures within our solar system, we're still a long way. Well, I suppose we're less likely to believe there's anything on Mars currently, but we still, that's one of the joys of doing the show and doing all the stuff that I do around science, is knowing that 100% certainty is never there. There's always we can find more. We get less and less wrong about things. That's what I like.
It's one of the reasons I liked physics so much.
Yeah.
Now, you were recently made a distinguished supporter of the British Humanist Association. How did that feel?
Oh yeah, there's there's certain institutions I didn't even know, and then I find out that I am. But the BHA, I like the British Humanist Association. I think at the moment we're in an odd position where people like Baroness Warsi, etc., seem to want to create this myth that there's an enormous battle between religion and atheists and humanists, whatever, and secular society is something that wants to strip religion down. And I think the British Humanist Association is politically, it's quite astute at making its point very clear that we believe everyone should have the same rights, that you don't have special rights because whether you're a physicist or whether you're an Anglican, you don't have special rights. We all have the same rights, and I think the work they do is very good. I had to do a lecture for them recently, Voltaire lecture, but unfortunately I talked so much that we got an hour in before I'd actually got to the beginning of the lecture. But I did get a friend of mine to play trombone to some earthworms though, in celebration of Charles Darwin making his son play the bassoon and penny whistles to earthworms to check on their auditory abilities.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned the sort of this mythical battle between science and religion. Now, I was talking before that I was a science teacher before I was into journalism, and as a science teacher, the idea of teaching creationism really did annoy me. Does it annoy you as much?
Well, I mean, I'm hoping that even in the United States we see that quite a few times when these cases are brought up, they don't win. Creationism and intelligent design are not a science. I see no reason not to teach the philosophy and ideas behind it, but certainly not within a science class. And I think this idea, we're in awkward situations where a small, good lord, it sounds like the band has started now. But I think we're in quite an awkward situation where I think they may well be climate change deniers in that band, and they're going to make sure that I can't say what I want to say. But the notion of balance, that there is some balance between evolution and creationism, and they both should be taught. It's like you go, no, one is not in any way scientific. One is a religious myth, and of course, that's one of the big problems as well. Is some of the more extremist elements of religion, and I'm thinking, by the way, the next time I'm back in this field, I'll be at the Greenbelt Christian Festival in about 2 months' time, but which it doesn't have that kind of element as far as I've seen. The few extremists seem to believe that genuinely they have an argument there with creationism, and it's not a scientific argument. It's a myth which can be embraced if you want, but certainly not within anything. If we start to change the definitions of science like that, then we get mermaidology and whatever else next, and that's. And so I think it's important for us to remember what balance is. Balance is proper balance. If you have an expert on a subject on the radio or on television, the person against them should not just be someone who has read a few things and had a weird dream and thinks that person's wrong. It needs to be someone who can offer up the same level of evidence. I think, I am someone, I'm very biased in terms of believing in evidence. We live in a world where we live as long as we do currently, in the West certainly, because of evidence. And evidence has done, evidence-based thinking has done us very well. So I don't like the idea that some people can compartmentalise it and go, well, I like this bit and I like my laptop and I like my medicines, but I'm also going to...
Yeah, absolutely. Now, sticking with the theme of religion, Dawkins introduces the scale of belief, 1 to 7. 7 being total non-belief, 1 being absolute, I do believe this. In the scale of religion, whereabouts would you place yourself on that?
Well, if we say total non-belief at 7, in terms of going, I'm not saying that there may not be some incredibly, kind of homeopathic amount of possibility that there might be something, because that obviously ultimately would be scientific, but in the way that I view my life, I see no place for there being a God. I see it as an answer to nothing on the planet Earth. So I would say I'm probably, nearest 7. I mean, I understand the idea that some people say, like Michael Shermer, that the correct position if you approach it scientifically is to say agnostic, because there always may be a remote possibility, but that remote, I don't even believe there's a big enough possibility for me to bother to buy a lottery scratch card, let alone immerse myself in communion on a Sunday.
Well, no, it's interesting you mention that, because that was going to be my very next question. What is your viewpoint on agnosticism? Now, the reason I asked that, for personally, as a scientist, as an evidence-based, I don't see that there's any argument for agnosticism itself, in that if you have evidence on one side and not enough evidence on the other, it's a clear decision. Whereas agnosticism seems to sit in the centre and sort of say, well, all evidence is equal, and actually there's not enough to make a decision. What do you think?
I think it's just down to that scientific way. But most of the people I know who would declare themselves agnostic, I think it is that scientific thing of, unfortunately, because of the way atheism's been painted in the media, there is this idea that it's somehow dogmatic. And I think that's why some people choose to pick agnosticism, to go, I'm not saying that, we could entirely rule this out. So, there may well be, but the people I know who say they're agnostic are really atheists. It's a game of semantics, and I think that's the problem. And unfortunately, because of the media that we struggle with and people's often ill-formed opinions, there's lots of words. Dawkins is seen as such an extremist, and I've done stuff with him, and he's a very compassionate man as well. And yeah, he might be a little bit harsh, but whenever people go, I see these columns by people going, well, the worst thing, I can't stand fundamentalist religion and extremism, but the only thing worse than that is atheism. Oh, for heaven's sake, here we go then. You can have those opinions in the kind of society that we live in. That's one of our lucks of the liberality that we have.
Yeah. Have you ever read Bill Bryson, his travels across America when he goes back home?
No, I haven't. It's that Made in the USA or one of those.
Yeah. It's absolutely fantastic. He goes across America and he visits lots of these small towns along the way, and he notes that it's outrageous if you say you're gay in these places, but they want to lynch you if you say you're an atheist.
Yeah,
they're so fundamental with it. So it's absolutely right. It's great that we live in a society where we're actually even able to say it.
Well, I think there's something that I talk about quite a lot in the kind of the full-length version of the show that I'm touring at the moment, is that I don't believe in the UK currently there is a particular battle between atheists. I think it's a little bit like kind of what started in America really at the beginning of the 20th century. I think I might be slightly out there, but which is it became a social distraction politically. When I hear a lot of politicians talking about atheism and how it wants to shut down your churches, I can only see it as being a distraction from actually what's going on within the NHS. That's and the fact that the Times richest list is richer than it's ever been before, while the poorest can. So all of those things, it's much easier to get people riled about, and that's why when you watch television programmes, you always just see the worst examples of both sides on, because it makes better drama, even if it's ultimately bereft of anything interesting intellectually.
Now, final question. I started with, you're probably best known for the Infinite Monkey Cage. Possibly a less known fact about yourself. You used to front a rock band called The Reg.
Right. Yeah.
Is there still a frustrated rock star in there?
Do you know what? I think from the moment that I got on stage, I realised that the frustration was over and I should never do it again. It was a short period. It was actually, the Reg was short for the Reg Guttridge experience. Reg Guttridge being a well-known boxing commentator. And we did some lovely covers of early Adam Ant work and a little bit of Beastie Boys and songs about Dennis Nielsen. I wasn't right for it. I was not a front man of a rock band. The limits of my talent are very rarely even as distant as the horizon. They're normally pretty much at my toes.
So there's no chance of a comeback there then?
Well, they've all gone off. The rest of the band are tremendously wealthy and work in the city, as so many grunge bands, of course, found themselves going in that direction.
Fight the system.
They're fighting it from within.
Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much for speaking to me.
Right.
Anything else you'd like to plug before we go?
Nah, that's fine. Yeah. When am I back on tour? I will be in the Midlands actually. I'm doing Nottingham Glee Club and Birmingham Glee Club, doing my Happiness Through Science tour, which I'll be doing in the autumn. So I'll be back there.
We'll be there then, absolutely. Thanks ever so much. Have a nice festival.
I never